Ever wonder what tank to actually jump in and play if you're just having a tough time on World of Tanks console? Well, today's tank I absolutely love for this, and it is the tier 7 British medium, the Comet. And in fact, I had to remark this a long time ago when I was trying to learn the game, and it is a brilliant tank to both learn the game as well as have a ton of fun whilst playing it. And what was even better is that in the replays portion of today's video, we were playing one of the new kind of modes that Wargaming have been testing out on the game, the Lucky Sevens event. And although it isn't currently in the game anymore, it was available as part of like a special event game mode, but it showcases the Comet really well in the games that we managed to have. So with that being said, what is the Comet all about? It is, of course, a fast firing low alpha damage tank that is capable of going 51 kilometers an hour and have good view range alongside a whole host of other bits and bobs that make this tank super fun. And it's down to the fact that this tank has a really nice damage per minute as a tier 7 medium, alongside the fact that it has good accuracy and 12 degrees of gun depression, making this a really versatile vehicle, being able to maneuver and change flanks as well as be able to be really effective in a lot of the matches that you'll play. And you're going to be seeing me play in a 7 versus 7 game mode, of course the Lucky Sevens event, whereby you got 7 minutes, 7 tanks on your team, 7 tanks on the enemy team, and essentially it's whoever can win and deal the most damage. And you'll see that we're able to deal, even in a only 7 vehicle game on each team, a ton of damage as well, and actually carry quite easily with a tank that is like this. Now, with a tank like this, there are a few limitations on that you don't have the best penetration with your standard rounds. You've got 148mm of penetration, which for a tier 7 really does kind of suck. It's on the lower end, and you're going to find yourself coming up in a lot of matches where you feel a little bit kind of worse for wear. But the whole point of this tank is that it isn't about trying to earn silver, it's about just having some fun, and sometimes you do have to load premium. And for people that are saying about, oh well, just premium spam, for example, the tier 7 Panther, which is a tech tree vehicle, has basically the same premium ammunition penetration, 10 less, with its standard rounds, than of course the premium round penetration of the Comet. So unfortunately the Comet is a bit of a having to fire premium to be able to deal with higher tier vehicles, rather than having the choice to do it in order to increase kind of the chances of you penning things. It basically is a block between being able to pen and just not penning things. So unfortunately that's the case, but this tank is very powerful regardless, and often you'll find yourself actually flanking people where you don't even need the premium anyway, because you can go through their side armor, or maybe you can even catch them off guard and be able to go through the back of their vehicle. So that's kind of how the Comet plays. It's not necessarily about having to fire premium, but when you are coming up against the front of them, you will have to do it. So with that caveat out the way, of course, there are quite a few premium rounds in our vehicle, 32 and 25 standard rounds. This is a nice mix between, you know, if you do come up against tier 9 vehicles and tier 9 heavies, you are able to actually do something against them. And then having enough standard ammunition for if you are playing in a tier 7 game. And the good thing about tier 7s is that it is a nice kind of range. I feel like this is the better of the tiers. There's a nice disparity between you and tier 9s, but it isn't insanely huge, as well as being able to play up against lower tier vehicles as well, where you're not kind of horrible in terms of like the performance of the tank. The alpha damage of the tanks at tier 7 isn't crazy compared to the 2 tiers lower. It is definitely better, but it feels like a nice mix of a vehicle. So the Comet, with that all being said, is a very good all-rounder. We're running this tank with advanced loader to be able to increase our damage per minute. We've got advanced optics to be able to view range increase of 10%, which is big for a medium tank where you're trying to spot for your team. And then we've got advanced concealment. Now for me, the Comet and the standard loadout of the vehicle mainly is decent enough that you don't need the extra accuracy from using vertical stabilizers. You've got 0.28, which to be honest with you is absolutely fine, and adding the vertical stabilizers is just going to make it a lot more accurate but probably to no real gain when you get to this sort of level of accuracy anyway. So with that being said, the alternate pieces of equipment, I would definitely drop the advanced concealment if you want to run a different build. Potentially you want to use improved ventilation to boost up a load of different things, but for me, the ability to stay undetected in this tank for a larger kind of radius, whereby you can essentially remain undetected from further away, is one of the bigger things about playing the tank. You can combine that with the mobility, and you can work around opponents rather than having to kind of have worse detectability, where people are going to spot you easier, and you can't play the tank how it's supposed to be, where you kind of outflank and stuff and outmaneuver vehicles with the Comet. So that's kind of how I like playing this vehicle, and it definitely worked when I was going for 3 marks on the tank, and maybe in the future, maybe I'll actually go for 4 marks, and we'll try and 4 mark all of the British mediums, as I believe we've got almost 3 marks on every tank except for the FV4202. So with that being said, we're running full premium consumables just because at this point in time I don't have any negatives for doing so, and yeah, we're not too worried about the silver. Essentially, you would drop out the enhanced medkit for a normal medkit if I was going to try and save a bit of money, and then I would drop out an enhanced repair kit for a normal repair kit, and I would always run enhanced rations. So that's kind of how we're setting up the tank. Of course, we've got camo on our vehicle to improve the concealment of the vehicle. Again, this gives you a bonus of 3%, which is very, very big for using this in the game, and it's going to add to your undetectability within your game. So definitely put camo on this vehicle. And that is basically it. Commander perks wise, I'm not going to go into every single one, but we're running our British light tank build in this tank just purely because there's no point in swapping around all of the consumables, and it works quite well in the Comet anyway. You've got run and gun for firing on the move, which is great, and the Comet being able to pinpoint people on the move whilst aiming and stuff like that is great, as well as situational awareness for increased view range, sixth sense, obviously a must, camo expertise, muffled shot, green thumb, all of those are essentially for our view range, and because we fire so often, having the increased camo factor when you do fire is very, very nice, because essentially you're going to be firing a lot. So if we can reduce our detectability when we're firing, that is very much appreciated. Steady aim for increased accuracy, rapid loading for increased DPM, and Born Leader for 10% boost to all of the crew skills alongside the crew performance in the game as well. These are in no way the order that you would want to actually add them into your tank. This was where I must have just respec'd my commander and just gone with all of the perks that I need. So do not go with kind of how I've laid it out, as in this being your first, then the second perk, third perk, blah blah blah. And you can work out kind of what sort of perks you want to go with by looking at the crew skills guide that we've done in the past. But either way, let's jump into the gameplay portion and see exactly what the Comet can do in the games. So jumping into Westfield, we start off with a pretty good map for the Comet. And of course, we're playing Lucky 7, so just want to reiterate that for anyone that maybe forgot since the beginning of this video, which is why there are only 7 tanks on each team. This is not because we're playing in some weird mode that is like co-op or anything like that, or that we're playing at a really off-peak time where you're forced into playing in lower tank matches. This is literally the game mode. It's exactly the same as you would normally expect from any game mode. It's a team destruction, and a very, very cool one to actually try out and play. And we did it on stream, so we managed to have a really good game in the Comet, showcasing what this tank is all about, why the 12 degrees of gun depression makes this tank very, very powerful, as well as having that decent mobility to kind of get there first and spot for your team as well, which is brilliant kind of aspects of what the Comet can do. And I'll be interested to see what you guys, whether you think it's actually that good, whether you've tried the Comet, maybe you think it's absolutely terrible, but I really enjoyed playing it. I felt like it's quite a cool looking tank. It plays quite well, and it works really well as well, whereby, you know, you can do all kinds of different things. You can see here we start off with coming up to the hill, and we can use the camo of the vehicle to remain undetected for the most part until the very last shot, where the Super Hellcat just basically is right next to us, and that's the only reason we really get spotted there. So this is where we can start dishing out a lot of damage. The T23E3, off the top of my head, I believe gets 240 damage, I believe, but you can see that we're reloading so quickly, and we're using our standard rounds here. Now, the one thing that you're seeing here is just able to hit up some of these Panthers and the Minuteman. The Minuteman is of course hold down, and that tank is horrible to actually play against. You have to hit the Cupola, which is a tiny shot, but of course we get the RNG gods on our side and we actually hit the Cupola there. Now we're going to stop aiming at him because it's going to be unlikely we're going to pen him, and so let's focus the damage on other people and we can deal with the Minuteman later on in this game. But here you go, here is the T28 HTC. We've loaded the premium rounds here because we want to be able to consistently hit. And you can see here the weak point of the T28 is this kind of right hand side where you can see a little like Cupola droid thing that's on the left and right hand side of the tank. And we can just plow a couple rounds in. And the great thing about the Comet is because, you know, you have that higher alpha damage, at least, or the high reload and okay alpha damage for how quickly you're reloading, that you can distribute where you're firing quite easily. Like you can swap between targets. You're not feeling like you have terrible dispersion where you're having to move a tiny bit, and that's going to cause your tank to become absolutely horribly inaccurate. And so you can do this sort of thing where you're just trying to fire off a lot of shells into loads of different opponents. And you can see there, yet again going for the T28's weak point, he gets taken out. And we can just keep on farming up damage. You can see here we're starting to get spotting damage and quite a bit of it. We're up to 1200 already. And the Panthers and stuff using the hills are finding themselves in a bit of a sticky situation. And there you go. We take out the hammer for the first enemy taken out in this game, having done 2,600 damage. You can also see we're still picking up assistance here just by spotting some of these guys, and it really is easy as that. And why I really like playing these low alpha damage guns, because they teach you that you have to hit your shots. They teach you a lot about kind of aiming. You're going to learn a lot by aiming with tanks like this because they have lower penetration. You're having to hit weak points. You're having to kind of aim, and you're getting a lot more experience with shooting at different places because you're firing more. Whereas, you know, the higher alpha damage tanks you don't get the opportunity purely because you don't reload as quick. Certainly don't want to be aiming like that though. And you can see there the T23-3 hits us, but he takes out our commander here. I'm deciding that I'm going to go around the Panther, which is fine because at this point we're just after the most amount of damage as possible. You can see me go for the Minuteman here. What we're going to aim for is the track of the Minuteman. Hopefully get a bit more assistance here. We track him there, and yes, we finish him off as well for 3,480 damage, and of course a victory in this game. 933 XP, a very, very short game, which is why you don't get the same amount of XP as you normally would. If this was a traditional game, I would definitely be upwards of 1,500 XP in the game, but it is a event game mode, which is why we don't get as much XP as you might expect, considering we did 5.1k combined damage, which is a very, very good game for a tier 7. Of course, we're firing so many premium rounds and having to do so to pen a lot of these heavy tanks from far away and hitting those weaker areas of the tanks. We lost 49,000 silver, which can be expected when you're just trying to have a bit of fun in the game. And there you go, a fantastic game in the Comet nonetheless. Our next game then is on Sand River. This is a pretty good map. The Lucky 7 event is basically only on a couple of the maps in the game. I think there's about 5 maps that you could play during this event game mode, so there's a lot of kind of repeat ones that you'll face, which I guess is not terrible considering that, you know, it's going to give you a lot of experience playing these different maps, and you're going to be able to kind of learn them quicker if you were trying to learn the maps. Of course, since we've been playing for so long, we already know how to play the map, so there's not really a benefit to us playing such a small rotation of maps. But at the same time, yeah, if you are a standard player who doesn't spend way too long playing the game like I do, you'll probably quite like the fact that you can play quite a slim amount of matches or kind of maps so that you can learn the game a little bit quicker. But you can see here we are hitting the Jackal, is pushing quite aggressively towards the southern side of the map. And what we've done is we've taken the middle area of the map, and we're going to sit in the bushes. We can use the camo of the tank to remain undetected, or help out the team by kind of staying out of the way. You can see here we're just going for the damage on the Lycan here. We track him and hit the tracks twice, and you can see here we've done quite a bit of damage. I'm just going for a blind fire there. Maybe we could hit him, maybe we don't manage to, but you know, sometimes you have to go for those blind fires in the hopes that you do hit people sometimes, especially when you've got nothing else to shoot. So with that being said, the Adler on the enemy team has pushed out. He then just slightly angles as we go for the damage, which is a bit unfortunate. And you can see me here just going for that cupola weak point of that tank. And here you go, we're just farming up the side of him. We hit him a couple times. He is now very, very poor on the amount of hit points he's got left. And there you go, we're up to 1,200 damage already. And the Craft Panther is pushing through. It's kind of difficult to actually see where we can hit through these rubbles. Of course, as you get more experience, I can definitely learn from that as well to be able to kind of reliably hit. We bounce off the front of the Jackal. We must have hit the upper plate at that ridiculous angle, which is the only way you can bounce off of a Jackal. So with that being said, either way, we've got a decent amount of damage so far. The Lycan's hitting us from the back. It's fine. We've got a lot of hit points still left anyway, so we can start to use those later on. The Craft Panther is ammo-racked, but it doesn't matter because now he's out of the game. And now we're up to 1,900 damage. So what are we going to do from here? Well, we're going to try and get one on the Lycan, who gets taken out before we can even do anything against him. Now we can push down against the Minuteman, but I'm a little bit careful as to pushing YOLO wagoning this guy, coming all the way around the corner. So what I'm going to do is just wait until he starts turning for the Tiger, who is our heavy tank, and we can put in one more into the Minuteman. But up to 2.14 thousand damage, and all you have to do with the Comet is play quite supportively, where you're not the one on the front. You don't want to play like a heavy tank, you don't want to be up close and personal all the time. You can do towards the later stages of games, but you certainly don't want to be doing it all the way at the beginning, because you will find yourself in sticky situations where you just don't get any more damage, or maybe you find yourself ending up with a lot less damage than you might hope. We spot the hammer on the enemy team, who's actually sat in base still. Don't quite know why you would do that in a top tier heavy in a 7 versus 7, but okay. Either way, we're getting some assistance here. We go for one on the T25AT, which is actually quite a dangerous vehicle to kind of deal with. And you can see me here, I'm just going for the hammer. We can get some free shots into him. The T25AT can't hit us here. We bounce off the hammer's cupola. He fires, so we know about him. And the T25AT comes around the corner, so we're going to go for the track on him to get extra assistance damage alongside actual damage. And this is what the Comet can do, taking out essentially the T25AT, as well as keeping him tracked and stuff like that, picking up 2.75 thousand damage, 820 XP in that game, and 1,067 assists, and getting what, just over 3.8 thousand combined damage, which is a very good game as well in the Comet. And that is basically the Comet. It really is a powerhouse when you can get that main armament firing constantly, and when you know when to push, and it will teach you a lot about how to aim, how to use penetration wisely against vehicles, and learn a ton when you are deciding to play these lower tier vehicles and lower tiers in general. A really, really fun one to jump in, play, and give it a go. And hopefully you do too. Let me know in the comment section down below whether you enjoy the Comet, maybe you think it's terrible, or maybe you want to see some more lower tier vehicles in the game, or at least vehicles that aren't tier 8 and above. Let me know and I will try and do that for you guys. Of course, we'll be working towards getting out tier 10 full tech tree reviews, and this will be part of it hopefully for the Centurion Action X and the FV4202. Hopefully you enjoyed. I'll see you in the next one. Have a great rest of the day, and I'll see you there. Goodbye.